All right, guys. So I've been telling you that I want to continue to be able to read Ember with you guys. So I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to try to read it to you this way and post a link so that you can hear me read the story. So I'm going to do a previously on because it's been quite a while since we were able to read. So I'm looking back and we read chapter 11, which was Lizzie's groceries. So if you remember, she had that whole bag of groceries, and it was spilled, and Lena had seen what she had in there, and there were all those things that had been gone for a long, long time, like pineapple and creamed corn and applesauce. And she was questioning her about where they were. And they discovered that her boyfriend, Looper, was getting those things, and they were debating whether or not that was good or not for her to have those really rare finds. And in the end, she decided that she wasn't going to take those extra things, like remember those extra pair of girls' shoes and some colored paper and medicine, those types of things. So we did start to read chapter 12. We had read a little bit into that, but I'm going to start at the beginning of chapter 12, which was the dreaded discovery, a dreadful discovery. So I'm going to start there at chapter 12, and I'll read this chapter. So part of this is something you've already heard, but I'm going to read it again just to kind of refresh us. All right, so here I go. Ready, campers? Back to City of Ember. Here we go. About a week after he and Lena had seen the man come out from the mysterious door, Dune was assigned to fix a clog in Tunnel 207. It turned out to be easy. He undid the pipe, rammed a long, thin brush down it, and a jet of water spurted out onto his face. Once he'd put the pipe back together, he had nothing else to do, so he decided to go out to Tunnel 351 and take another look at the locked door. It was strange, he thought, that no announcement about a way out of Ember had come. Maybe that door had not been what he thought it was. So he set out for the south end of the pipeworks. When he came to the roped-off passage in Tunnel 351, he ducked in and walked along through the dark, feeling his way. He was pretty sure the door would be locked as usual. His mind was on other things. He was thinking of his green worm, which had been behaving oddly, refusing to eat and hanging from the side of its box with its chin tucked in. And he was thinking about Lena, whom he hadn't seen for several days. He wondered where she was. When he came to the door, he reached absently for the knob, and what he felt startled him so much that he snatched his hand back as if he'd been stung. He felt again, carefully. There was a key in the lock. For a long moment, Dune stood as still as a statue. Then he took hold of the doorknob and turned it, very slowly. He pushed on the door. It swung inward without a sound. He opened it only a few inches, just enough to peer around the edge. What he saw made him gasp. There was no road, or passage, or stairway behind the door. There was a brightly lit room, whose size he could not guess because it was so crowded with things. On all sides were crates and boxes, stacks and bundles and packages. There were mounds of cans, heaps of clothing, rows of jars and bottles, stacks of light bulb packages. Piles rose to the low ceilings and leaned against the walls, blocking all but a small space in the center. In that small space, a little living room had been set up. Do you remember this part, boys and girls, who was in there? There was a greenish rug, and on the rug, an armchair and a table. On the table were dishes smeared with the remains of food, and in the armchair facing Dune was a great blob of a person, whose head was flopped backwards so that all Dune could see of it was an upthrust chin. The blob stirred and muttered, and Dune, in the second before he stepped back and pulled the door closed, caught a glimpse of a fleshy ear, a slab of gray cheek, and a loose, purplish mouth. That day, Lena had more messages to carry than ever. There had been 5 blackouts in a row during the week. They were all fairly short. The longest was 4.5 minutes. Lena had heard, but there had never been so many so close together. Everyone was nervous. People who might ordinarily walk to someone's house were sending messages instead. They often didn't come out into the streets, but beckoned to a messenger from the doorway. By 5 o'clock, Lena had carried 39 messages. Most of them were more or less the same. I'm not coming to the meeting tonight. Decided to stay home. I won't be in work tomorrow. Instead of meeting me in Clothing Square, why don't you come to my house? The citizens of Ember were hunkering down, burrowing in. Fewer people stood around talking in groups under the lights of the square. Instead, they would pause briefly to murmur a few words to each other and then hasten onward. Lena was on her way home to Mrs. Murdo's. She and Poppy had moved in with all their things when she heard rapid footsteps. Startled, she turned and saw Dune racing towards her. At first, he was so out of breath he couldn't speak. "What is it? What is it?" said Lena. "The door," he panted. "The door in tunnel 351. I opened it." Lena's heart leapt. "You did?" Dune nodded. "Is it the way out?" Lena whispered fiercely. "No," said Dune. He glanced behind him, clutching Lena's arm. He pulled her into a shadowy spot on the street. "It doesn't lead out of Ember," he whispered. "It leads to a big room." Lena's face fell. "A room? What's in there?" "Everything. Food, clothes, boxes, cans, light bulbs, stacks of them. Everything. Piles and piles up to the ceiling." His eyes grew wide, and somewhere in the middle of it all, someone was in the middle of it all, asleep. Who? A look of horror passed over Dune's face. "Do you remember who it is?" "Who was it?" "Yep, the mayor," he said, conked out in a big armchair with an empty plate in front of him. "The mayor?" Lena whispered. "Yes, the mayor has a secret treasure room in the pipeworks." They stared at each other speechless. Then Dune suddenly stamped hard on the pavement. His face flushed red. "That's the solution he keeps telling us about? It's a solution for him, not the rest of us. He gets everything he needs, and we get the leftovers. He doesn't care about the city. All he cares about is his fat stomach." Lena felt dizzy, as if she'd been hit on the head. What will we do? She couldn't think of anything. She was so stunned. "Tell everyone," said Dune. He was shaking with anger. "Tell the whole city the mayor is robbing us." Wait. Lena put a hand on Dune's arm and concentrated for a minute. "Come on," she said at last. "Let's go sit in Harkin Square. I have something to tell you, too." At the north side of Harkin Square stood a circle of believers, clapping their hands and singing one of their songs. Lately, they seemed to be singing more loudly and cheerfully than ever. Their voices were shrill. "Coming soon to save us," they wailed. "Happy, happy day." Near the gathering hall steps, something unusual was happening. 20 or so people were pacing around and around, carrying big signs painted on old planks and on big banners made of sheets. The signs said, "What solutions, Mayor Cole?" and "We want answers." Every now and then, demonstrators would yell these slogans out loud. Lena wondered if the mayor was paying any attention. Dune and Lena found an empty bench on the south side of Harkin Square and sat down. "Now listen," said Lena. "I am listening," said Dune, though his face was still red and the look on his face was stormy. "I saw Lizzie coming out of the storerooms yesterday," said Lena. She told him all about the cans and Lizzie's new friend, Looper, and what Looper was doing. I wonder what we're thinking about Looper right now. Do you have some thoughts about him? Think about that. Dune pounded on his fist on his leg. "That's 2 of them doing it," he said. "Wait, there's more. Remember how I thought there was something familiar about the man who came out the door? I've remembered what. It was the way he walked, sort of dipping over sideways. And also that hair, all that black hair, all unbrushed and sticking out. I've seen him twice, and I don't know why I didn't remember who it was right away. Maybe because I've only seen him from the front. I took a message for him on my first day." "Who was it?" Dune was jingling with impatience. "Well, who was it? Who was it?" "It was Looper. Looper, who works in the storerooms, Lizzie's boyfriend. And Dune?" Lena leaned forward. "It was a message for the mayor that he gave me, and it was this." "What was the message?" Delivery at 8. Dune's mouth dropped open. So that means... Are you putting this together? Delivery from Looper to the mayor and the storeroom. Are you putting this together? Oh, he's taking things from the storeroom for the mayor, and he's giving some to Lizzie and selling some things in his store. Ooh, cried Dune. He slapped his hands against his head. Why didn't I get it before? There's a hatch in the ceiling near tunnel 351. It must go right into the storerooms. Looper comes through there. That's what we heard that day, remember? A sort of scraping. That would have been the hatch opening. Then a thud, his sack of stuff dropping through. And then a sound like someone jumping down and landing hard on the ground. And then walking slowly, because he was carrying a load. Do you remember all those sounds, boys and girls, when we first were reading that part of the chapter? Way back when in the other chapter? And then walking quietly on the way out because he'd left it all for the mayor. Lena took a deep breath. Her heart was drumming and her hands were cold. We have to think what to do, she said. If this were an ordinary situation, the mayor would be the one to tell. But the mayor is the one committing the crime, said Dune. So then we should go tell the guards, I guess, said Lena. They're next in authority to the mayor. Though I don't like them much, she added. She remembered how she'd been so roughly hustled down the stairs from the roof of the gathering hall, especially the chief guard. But you're right, Dune said. We should tell the guards. They'll go down into the pipeworks and see for themselves that we're telling the truth. Then they can arrest the mayor and have all the stuff put back in the storerooms. And then they can tell the city what's been going on. That's a much better idea, said Lena. Then you and I can get back to what's more important. What? Figuring out the instructions. Now that we know that the door we found wasn't the right one, we have to find the right one. I don't know, said Dune. We might be all wrong about those instructions. They could just be about some old Pipeworks tool closet. He made a sour face. Instructions for Egriston or Egriston? Or Egrisman or whatever it was? Why couldn't he have been just an especially stupid Pipeworks guy who needed instructions to find his way around? He shook his head. I don't know. I think maybe those instructions are just hogwash. Hogwash? What's that? It means nonsense. I read it in a book in the library. But it can't be nonsense. Why would it have been kept in a box like that with a strange lock? Oh my goodness, I wonder if Dune is starting to have doubts too. Maybe Lena's going to be the only one that thinks that the instructions are important. Oh no. But Dune didn't want to think about the instructions right then. We'll figure it out tomorrow, he said. Right now, let's go find the guards. Wait, said Lena, catching hold of the sleeve of his jacket. I have one more thing to tell you. What? My grandma died. Oh. Dune's face fell. That's so sad, he said. I'm sorry. His sympathy made tears spring into Lena's eyes. Dune looked startled for a moment. Then he took a step towards her and wrapped his arms around her. He gave her a squeeze so quick and tight that it made her cough. And then it made her laugh. She realized all at once that Dune, thin, dark-haired Dune, with his troublesome temper and his terrible brown jacket and his good heart, was the person that she knew better than anyone else now. He was her best friend. Thanks, she said. Well, she smiled at him. Let's go talk to the guards. They crossed the square and climbed the steps of the gathering hall, sitting at the big reception desk outside the door of the mayor's office. Outside was the assistant guard, Barton Snowd, the same one Lena had encountered her first time here. Snowd looked bored. His elbows were on the desk, and his chin was moving very slowly from side to side. Sir, said Dune, we need to speak with you. The guard looked up. Certainly, he said. Go right ahead. In private? Said Lena. The guard looked puzzled. His small eyes darted back and forth. This is private? He said. No one here but me. But anyone could come along, said Dune. What we have to say is a secret and very important. Very important? Said Snowd. Secret? His face brightened. Grunting, he raised himself up from his chair and motioned them into a narrow hallway off to the side of the main hall. "What is it?" he said. They told him. As they spoke, interrupting each other to make sure they got in all the details, the guard's eyebrows gradually lifted higher and higher over his eyes. "You saw this room?" he said. "This is true? Are you sure?" He was chewing faster now. "You mean the mayor? You mean the mayor is—" At that moment, a little way down the hall, a door opened. Through it came 3 more guards, including, Lena spotted him by his beard, the chief guard. They strode forward, talking to each other in low voices. As they passed, the chief guard threw a quick glance at Lena. "Does he recognize me?" Lena wondered. She couldn't tell. Barton Snode finished his sentence in a husky whisper. "You mean the mayor is stealing?" "That's right," said Dune. "We thought you should be informed, because who else can arrest the mayor? And once you've done that, the guards can put all the things he's stolen back where they came from." "And then tell the city that a new mayor has to be found," said Lena. Barton Snode leaned heavily against the wall and rubbed a hand over his chin. He seemed to be thinking. "Something must be done," he said. "This is shocking, just shocking." He started back towards his desk, and Dune and Lena followed. "I will take a note," he said. Taking a pencil from the desk drawer, Lena watched as he wrote slowly on a scrap of paper, "Mayor stealing, secret room." When he finished, he let out a satisfied breath. "Very good," he said. "Action will be taken. You may be sure, some sort of action, quite soon." "Good," said Dune. "Thank you," said Lena, and they turned to leave. The 3 guards were standing by the main door of the gathering hall. As Dune and Lena went out, the chief guard moved aside to make way for them, and they went through the door and out into the wide front steps. Lena glanced over her shoulder. Before the door swung closed, she saw the chief guard striding toward the reception desk, where Barton Snode was standing up, leaning forward, his eyes shining with important news. And that's it for today. All right, so that was chapter 12. So I will read chapter 13 and send you the link for that next time. Chapter 13 is called Deciphering the Message. Ooh, remember the message? All right, so I want you to think about what's going on in that chapter and what the guards are going to do with that information, because they've just been told something really big, something really important, like the person who's in charge of their whole town is committing a crime. You know, he's the one who's supposed to be, honest and doing the right thing, is stealing from all the people of Ember. And he's telling them, don't worry, everything's fine. So that's kind of a really big deal that's going on. So I want you to think about that and think about what you think the guards are going to do with that information and what's going to happen. Are they going to go down into the pipeworks and find the room? And is the mayor going to get arrested? Or, what do you think is going to happen? So make some predictions about that. And we'll talk about it. I'm going to find a way. Maybe we'll do a Zoom meeting where we can just talk about this chapter. Okay. So have a great day, guys. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.